Hello, today we are exploring the difference between the subtle and the physical within the universe as we perceive it. It's true to say the physical universe is everything we can see and perceive and then some. In other words, there's probably a lot more. And the subtle counterpart, everything has a subtle counterpart, everything. Whether it's a human being, whether it's a planet, an animal, whether it's a flower, whether it's even an occasion or a gathering, has a subtle counterpart. But the subtle is way beyond the physical. It's way beyond anything that can be conceived of in terms of a material universe. I think the physical solar system indicates a complex orchestration and a construct. It's complex, but it's not all there is. And someone posed the question to me recently that they were born 12 minutes outside of or just after the Apollo moon landing. How surely that had an effect on them. Surely that had an effect on their life and on their chart. And this is a question that is difficult to answer at first for an astrologer because, of course, the moon is it's an influence. It's a luminary that, together with the sun, that plays such a major part in the study of astrology. Okay, but even the physical moon is a pointer or part of something more subtle in the way of indicator and a transmitter. And I think there is a need to differentiate between the physical and the subtle in the way that we mean it, because this is the $64,000 question when you talk about astrology. Astrology is a set of traffic lights, if you like, and it does the planetary system that we use is having an influence, but it is not all there is. So I think that this is where astrology got into disrepute in ancient days and still does in some circles, because people think it's a kind of worship or it's something to be worshipped, and it isn't. It's an intermediary factor between what we know of our evolvement and our advancement on Earth and whatever is much higher in the way of spirituality. And certainly when I talk about subtle here, I mean spiritual, because there is material and physical, and then there's subtle and spiritual. And spiritual is a much overused term. And people who know of the way I work will know that I'm wary about the use of the word spiritual. But in this pod, we're trying to make the differentiation between the physical and the subtle. And a good example would be in the old days, or the older days of ufology, exploration of UFOs and what they might be. There was this big argument raging about whether it was a physical phenomena or whether it was a psychic phenomena. And to my knowledge, there was only one person, not saying that's why I say to my knowledge, who alluded to this and was brave enough to to address the subject. There's a lady called Jenny Randalls, who was a British, I think, paid investigator of ufology. And she said, well, it's both. It's both a physical and a psychic phenomena, in that it is accessible to some people and certainly has some kind of physical basis for validation, but is accessed on a wavelength. So it will not be something which could be seen or sighted by everybody. It's a kind of symbolic doorway into something much more subtle. And I think that when we talk about the electric universe, we are talking about a system which is very vibratory and very highly charged, which serves the subtle, the higher, or the more spiritual, unknown. The meaning of the word esoteric and exoteric. Esoteric is that which is slightly hidden, if you like, or not seen. And exoteric is the result of that. So it's something coming into form because of an unknown quantum, the subtle, the spiritual. So the occult is the study of that which is hidden, or bringing out of the darkness into the light, into the known. And the subtle is not physical, but the physical can't exist without the subtle. So there's a very, very slight, almost seamless point at which that which is subtle becomes physical. But still, the subtle holds sway over the physical and is, in a way, inured from the dangers that physicality brings us into, whether this is a planet or a body or something that can be impacted in the physical. In the subtle realms, there is no such danger. There is no such point of impact. And that subtle is what we quest, what we seek to understand, where we go, why we're ultimately part of a continuum, an energy that doesn't die. Because that energy refines and refines and refines until it's subtle energy. It's just subtle energy, spiritual energy, if you like. But it is not to be confused with physical findings in other solar systems or tumultuous explosions within known solar systems. This is the argument, I think, that astronomy has with astrology, and you'll find in the old days, astrologers were always astronomers, and they used their own telescopes, and they divined or they observed the movement of the planets. But they knew, even so, that was just an indication of an influence. It was an indication of something. It wasn't the thing itself. It's like a flashlight is beamed upon an activity, and it's the flashlight that enables the activity to be divined or to be seen or to be translated. But the flashlight itself is not the cause of the activity. It is only the indicator of the activity. Okay, and in a way, this is probably one of the ways that astrology is mostly seen now, as an indicator of things that are going to happen or things that can happen. Things happen because they can happen. And even the subtle does not change that. So everything springs from the subtle, but the subtle itself remains apart from what it's physically spawned, if you like, just as a parent remains separate from the child once the child is in being or born. See, there is definitely a duality which many religions or many beliefs talk of. And the duality is the light and the dark, or the seen and the unseen, the possible, the potential, and the actual, and the extant. And that duality is necessary. Another way of talking about the subtle is the causal plane. But even the subtle, there is more to the subtle than the causal plane. The causal plane is almost like a halfway house or a sorting agency for what can possibly be delivered and what can't. And a lot can't, but much can. And that duality of our mind, when it's shall we, shan't we, the red one, the black one, is it, isn't it, is part of the is part of the duality. It's part of the tandem of the subtle and then the physical. Because when we think, what we think, we create. Not from every thought, but what we are thinking is taking us into some sense of being. And it's the duality of our thought that causes us to be hesitant or caught between the possibilities inherent within every day or every week or anyone's lifetime. And that duality is between the subtle and the physical. And obviously the whole universe is, or the known universe. The known universe is the physical universe, but the spiritual or subtle counterpart of that it's the microcosm and the macrocosm again, the yin and the yang, the inhalation and the exhalation. We're not going to know, we're never going to know the full extent, because there is no, as far as we can see, full extent. We're never going to reach that full extent. All we can be sure of, or all some of us perhaps can be sure of, is that there is a subtle counterpart to every physical actuality. And there's a lot of confusion now with all the new cosmology and what's going on and what the findings are and quantum physics and so on in people's minds, because it's a lot of what is alluded to is not to become a physical reality for us to be able to test or see. It is to do with something where there is a join between that which is coming into our known universe and from a more subtle quantum, which of itself indicates a higher plan or a superior force at work, or a more subtle level from which the denser material physicality can be made to happen. So the electric universe is both the physical and the subtle, or the spiritual. But it certainly points more to a spiritual quantum within our everyday life, within our known world or worlds, than we would perhaps at first glance realise. Okay, join us again for our next pod on the electric universe.